Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here with another Falconry video. Today's video we're going to be talking about the topic of whether or not Harris hawks are ruining modern falconry. But before we do, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. It really does help me keep this channel up and going. And then we'll just jump right on in. Harris hawks. Harris hawks, first of all, I know some of you purists out there are like, well, Ben, Mr. Woodruff, it's not Harris hawk, it's Harris's hawk. Let's get it right. But that's their common name. I've said it before in previous videos. Common names are just subject to whatever the masses are going with. It's a scientific name that has to be agreed upon all over the world. So in my area, most falconers have just simplified it down to Harris hawks. So that's why I use that term in this video. But Harris hawks are incredible. They're amazing birds. If you're new to falconry, there's sort of two groups of hawks. There's the Accipiters, the forest hawks, which are your true hawks, which include species such as the northern goshawk, which is, powerful hunting bird, and the Cooper's hawk. These are birds that are incredibly fast and agile, but have tons of problems. Like there's tons of a lot of accommodations you have to make and a lot of concessions you have to make in the training process. So these are high maintenance, high yield hunting partners. And then you have your buzzards or Buteos, soaring hawks. In the United States, that's birds such as the red-tailed hawk, the most common of these that usually discussed and talked about. Then, of course, the ferruginous hawk is the largest we have here in the United States. The buzzards or the Buteos really weren't given much of a chance back in the old days because they're more sluggish and less spirited of a hunter than a lot of your other hawks. But they have proven their own, so they're much easier to train. They're much easier going. They're much more forgiving than the Accipiters, but they're also lower yield. They're not as fast. They're not as flashy. They're not as gamey when they're out hunting. So those are your two hawks. And of course, there's falcons, eagles, owls, all that. But your true hawks, the Accipiters, and your soaring hawks, the Buteos or the buzzards, okay? That's what you got. The Harris hawk really is a brand new species of falconry. Brand new, relatively speaking, meaning falconry's got a 5, 6, 7,000 year history, and really Harris hawks documentably are only less than 100 years that they've been in the sport. They are a South American, Central American, and Mexican species that barely pushes their range into the United States. Now remember, the United States has no traditional history of falconry. So the falconers, the young folk who came and were like, hey, I've heard of falconry in other countries, I want to pioneer this in the United States, they didn't have any tradition to go with. So that also meant there weren't any prejudices that those traditions might have. Like, oh, you shouldn't fly a red-tailed hawk because that's not a very good bird. It's sluggish. It's like, well, I want to try one. Why not? This benefited the Harris hawk. The Harris hawk comes from a lineage of neotropical eagles that it branched off of. And so it's a bit different. Its build is more like the true hawks, the Accipiters, more like a goshawk. It's got a ridiculously long tail, which makes it very agile. It's got really long, gangly legs, so it can reach out, it can grab, and it has comparatively short, rounded wings, somewhat similar again to a goshawk. But the mentality is much closer to the Buteos, like the red-tailed hawk, more easygoing. So when falconers gave these birds a try in the mid-1900s, it was like, this is the most amazing bird ever, because you've got the best of both. Much easier to train, but still very gamey. Not as fast as a goshawk, but still very much so. So what are your pluses of a Harris hawk? Well, first of all, very strangely, they're pack hunters. They hunt in packs of 5 to 20 birds in the wild. Why is that so good? Two reasons. Number one, that means you, the falconer, trying to bridge the gap of communication with the bird and help them have the understanding of the concept of falconry. We're hunting partners, we're working together. They genetically already understand that because they're used to hunting partners that are their pack. So you become their pack. So extremely easy to train because of that. Second thing, of course, is that if you want, you could get more than one Harris hawk and train them to hunt in a pack, which is amazing to have a pack of little flying feathered velociraptors working with you and hunting rabbits or pheasants or whatever you're going after. So they're very easy to train. They are very Very gamey, very fast, very agile. Even though their feather proportions, as far as the length and shape of their wings and tail, is very much like a goshawk, unlike a goshawk, the feathers aren't brittle. You can grab their tail and bend it completely the other direction, which is incredible. It's just to be able to handle that on a kill without worrying the risk of your bird breaking a feather. It's wonderful. About the only real drawbacks, I've flown Harris Hawks for years, and about the only drawbacks I can say is some of them can be a bit squawky, where they don't want to shut up. They kind of do the Marco Polo at each other in the wild. Where are you? I'm here. Where are you? I'm here. So they can get very vocal, and they do not handle the extremes of cold that, say, a goshawk or a red-tailed hawk could handle. But other than that, they're wonderful. If you're new to falconry, birds being predators, if they're fat, they're like, I just want to sit and burn through these calories. I don't want to go fly or hunt. So just like training an Olympic athlete, we cut down their weight and then exercise them and build up their muscle. Okay, and so there's this weight range that you dial in that is right to where, like, hey, I'm eager and excited to go hunt, but I've got loads of energy. I'm not lethargic in any way. I'm not fat, but I'm not too skinny. And you're dialing in that weight range. On a Harris Hawk, that range is much bigger because they're used to a pack. If your pack's moving, you're moving with them. That's their mentality. So what's the drawback? I love them. People love them. Why on earth would anybody say that Harris Hawks are ruining modern falconry? Well, I want to share with you, it's not my view, but I have listened to the people who who have this perspective, share this perspective out in public, and I want you to understand it, because it's kind of interesting. We're living in a very different time right now where falconry is changing. Remember, falconry has been around for thousands of years. Thousands of years. Most countries of the world have a rich heritage with traditions that are passed on very rarely through books. And certainly not on the internet, because it didn't exist. You don't want to write a book because these were trade secrets. Why did that matter? In most countries, it was passed down, parent to child or master to apprentice. It was a trade. Like a blacksmith isn't going to write a book in the old days, how to blacksmith, so you don't need... No. You train your apprentices, and when your apprentices become a journeyman and a master, they can go train new blacksmith apprentices. It's the same idea. So there's subtle nuances to training birds that were passed on, how to handle aggression, how to handle a tiny little behavior glitch and make it better to avoid screaming, to avoid them flying off, to avoid them being afraid on the kill. All of these things. Now, why some falconers, especially some very experienced old-timers, are worried about Harris Hawks. Harris Hawks make falconry easy. And some contend too easy, meaning with no experience, very little training, people can just get a Harris Hawk, and if they're getting it roughly in the weight range and are just getting out, you're really going to have success. Obviously, there's more to a Harris than that. They are intelligent, they are complex, but they are forgiving, and they are willing to work with you, and they understand the game of working together from the get-go compared to other raptors. Now, other raptors, it used to be you worked your way up to them. It used to be Harris Hawks were not readily available. You could find them captive bred, but there weren't many of them out there like there are now. And so if you were a falconer in my area, by law, you had to start with a red-tailed hawk or an American kestrel as your first bird. And then after that, you might work up as a general class, you worked up to something more difficult, and finally as a master, whatever, much harder birds. Large falcons are tricky to train. To train a falcon to leave your fist, circle, and then go upwind instead of blowing downwind with the wind, go up thousands of feet, and then come back overhead and wait for you to flush up quarry so they can dive down and catch it, that's not easy. There's a million things that can go wrong. To train a goshawk, to dial in, or a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned hawk, to train them to be able to hunt, but to do so in a way that they're not aggressive to you, to train them not to carry off their kill, to train them to travel well and not be vocal. All of these things together, these are difficult things to do. And there is, a bit of a progression that happens. And what some of the old-timers are contending is that Harris Hawks are preventing falconers from ever having to learn those lessons. and that some of, in the big picture of falconry being passed on, that some of these concepts of training might be lost as we move forward into the future. Now, I've even heard some people say, why, a falconer might get a Harris hawk and just fly Harris hawks and nothing else for the rest of their lives. Now, to which I respond, and what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. Sounds like a pretty good way to be. If you like Harris hawks, that flight style, and you're having fun and getting out and hunting, what's wrong with that? Nothing. But the principle that people are saying is that it used to be that you had to actually really learn from your sponsor, and you had to dig through books and really search and learn these little details of training. Now, you could say I'm as bad as a Harris hawk in the fact that I'm making public videos that make it so some of these nuances can be easily acquired and that you don't have to go through the natural progression. But that's part of why I'm doing this, because the world is changing, and I would rather get some of these ancient principles of training out to where they're available, that people anywhere in the world can utilize them. Even after I'm gone, I'm hoping that maybe some tidbits in these videos can help falconers in the future. I do not believe that Harris hawks are destroying falconry. I think that Harris hawks have revitalized it in many parts of the world where interest in falconry was waning. Suddenly, you have a bird that is new and exciting and is easy to train. Hey, it's the hot rod of the hawks. Hey, let's try these. And it's really, in many countries, that Harris hawks have been imported and captive bred and used in falconry. It has revitalized the sport in those countries. So falconry is always adapting. Sometimes it's slower than others, sometimes quicker. We're very quick to embrace things like radio telemetry and GPS telemetry and using our phones to be able to connect to GPS and track our birds. That sounds great. Couldn't even be conceived in the recent past. So Harris hawks, I love them. If you think somebody is saying that, if you're talking to somebody and they're telling you that Harris hawks are ruining the sport, ask them why. Listen to their views, listen to their opinions, because I think it is important that we share what we've learned, that we share our knowledge, we share our experience. We not only pass it down to an apprentice, if you're in a country that requires an apprenticeship, but that we share with each other the ways to properly teach and train and in a happy and healthy way keep these birds up and running and flying and happy. And Harris hawks, I do not believe, are a threat to that. I think that I do see a shift away in my area from the more difficult species. I see fewer and fewer people flying big falcons, fewer and fewer people flying goshawks, and more people have been like, yeah, I'll fly a red-tailed hawk as an apprentice, and then I'll just get a Harris hawk. I am seeing that shift, and part of me is sad to see that diversity of species being reduced in what local people are flying. But that's okay. Falconry is about passion. And if you have a species that you love and that works well for you, and you're getting out and flying it, then that's great, and that's how it should be. So give that some thought. Let me know your thoughts down below. What species in your area have you seen an increase in popularity? What species in your area do you see a decrease in popularity? It'd be interesting to know from around the world what species are preferred and what changes you see in your world. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. And as always, happy hawking.